Didn't even ask me what I wanted. You made dumb assumptions. Clearly not your forte. Clearly don't be fucking. You've been fucking liars.
Hey friends, I am Pink Mommy and let's get into the Sailor Moon deep dive that nobody asked for. So let's talk about our protagonist, Usagi. Now, in the manga, she is complex. She's a little immature. She's somewhat of a crybaby, but she also has these great redeeming qualities about her. She's kind, she's caring. She truly wants to save the world, even if she is scared. Whereas in the anime, she is more characterized. What I mean by that is she's comedically a crybaby. That's almost all that you see of her for the first 2 seasons. Her evolution happens a lot slower in the anime versus the manga, which does make sense. You have more filler episodes in the anime versus the manga. The manga kind of gets straight to it. So yeah, she's a lot less dynamic, I think, in the anime. And if I'm being honest, I think that's truly the only difference. Everything else was very representative of the source material. Similarly, I would say the same thing is the case for our antagonist, Queen Beryl, which is our antagonist for the first and second season for both the anime and the manga. While most of it is the same, the manga goes more into her backstory. So we find out that she was once a sorceress and she had all of this power. So it goes deeper into her origins than what the anime does. However, I will say that the anime not going deep into those origins does not necessarily distract from the storyline or detract from the storyline. It is a difference that I've noticed, though. I will say that reading the manga, especially coming off of watching the anime series, it was really cool to see her storyline or her backstory rather, because as a kid that was something that I was always curious about. Let's talk about some of the differences. So Sailor Pluto, in the manga, we meet her very early on and she plays a key part of obviously the heroism. For some reason in the anime, we don't actually meet her until basically the end of season 2, and she plays a way less significant role, which I'm sure that the difference in that had to do with pacing, but as someone who's a fan of Sailor Pluto, I thought that was a bit annoying. So another difference from the manga is Ray, Sailor Mars. So in the manga, she's more serious and she doesn't really care about boys. She's less boy crazy. And the person that she actually clashes with is Venus. So in the anime, they make her less serious. They make her a little bit more boy crazy, and they actually create tension with her and Usagi, which for me was uncalled for. I don't really understand why they needed to add that tension in there, but they did. I personally think that it does add to the story, but it adds to the story in a different way. I think it misrepresents the original source material, but in such a minor way that you really can't complain about it. But me personally, I felt like it was an unnecessary alteration to make. Side note, while we're on the topic of Sailor Mars maturity, is learning that Usagi is not your spirit animal. When I was a kid, I resonated so much with Usagi because I was also a crybaby and wanted to save the world. Now reading the manga, I realize that it is actually Sailor Mars that I resonate with, and I just find it so funny. Number one, because I am an Aries, her zodiac is an Aries. She essentially to me is the representation of an Aries. I should have loved her back in the day, but anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there for shits and giggles. Number one, his dress game A1. Let's start there. So let's get into the romance part of it. If you are a Sailor Moon fan, if you've been following it, then you know that a key component of the story is Usagi's relationship with Mamoru, aka Tuxedo Mask. Most of the content from the anime is going to be the same as the manga. I would say that the only key differences that you're going to see from the first 2 seasons in particular is, again, going back to the pacing. So because the manga does move through character development at a quicker pace than the anime does, we get a more fleshed out view of Mamoru by the end of Act 2, whereas I think in the anime by the end of Act 2 you may still have questions. You still may not be fully sure of what their history is, but I think, again, overall it is the same. There wasn't too much that was altered. Let's get into the complaints. I think my biggest complaint with the Sailor Moon franchise in general is the fact that it does kind of feed into that stereotype. You think about it, Sailor Moon is that bitch. The Guardians as a group are them bitches. Like they really out here running shit, right? Like they're these powerful beings, they're beautiful, they're long lived, they have the ability to reincarnate, all of these things, right? And yet this strong, amazing goddess of a woman, all she really cares about is Mamoru. And even when you think about, he's constantly saving her. Tuxedo Mask is constantly saving her. And even though it's like a wonderful concept, it's beautiful. It's like, oh, he loves her. He's going to be there no matter what. But she don't actually need him. In real life, Sailor Moon and the Guardians are significantly more powerful than Tuxedo Mask is. And yet, so much of her story, so much of her heroism is centered around her love for him. And while I do think that that is intentional and it is a part of the story and it serves a purpose creatively, I still feel like it didn't make sense to me, you know, a little bit. Like that was the opportunity to be the beginning of that really cool like woman empowerment era, and obviously that was way too soon. This came out in the 90s. Nobody was thinking about that. Nobody was trying to do that. And obviously it's not American, so it is also different cultural norms that come into play. But that is probably my one complaint when it comes to the Sailor Moon series. Also, as much as a kid I enjoyed the fact that Usagi was a crybaby because I resonated with that, now that I'm older, I wish that she wasn't. For the first 2 seasons in particular, there really isn't too much of a difference. The main differences that you're going to see is going to be in the personalities of the Guardians and the characteristics of the Guardians, and not necessarily in the plot and storyline. So far, I would still say read the manga over the anime, but again, I have read several mangas that have been turned into animes, and there are a few where you see some changes that, you know, the fandom gets upset about. I feel like for me, solely for the first 2 seasons, I don't see anything so different that I would be upset about it. I'm so far very happy with how comparable the anime is to the manga.